Marcus Chen rubbed his bloodshot eyes and stared at the seventh cup of coffee growing cold on his workbench. The mining station's artificial gravity hummed beneath his feet, a constant reminder that he was floating in the void between stars, fixing broken machines while the rest of the crew slept. The overtime pay was good, but 3 weeks without a proper night's sleep was starting to take its toll. The workshop door hissed open, and Rodriguez wheeled in another damaged unit. "Sorry, Chen. Found this one stuck in Tunnel 7. Looks ancient." Marcus groaned. The robot was a massive thing, easily 8 feet tall and built like a tank. Its hull was scarred with decades of use, and several of its mining arms hung loose like broken wings. The model number was so faded he couldn't make it out, but the design looked older than anything he'd seen in his 15 years as an engineer. "Where did this come from?" Marcus asked, running his hands along the robot's frame. "Boss found it in the deep tunnels. Says it was just sitting there, powered down. Probably been there since the first mining crews came through." Rodriguez shrugged. "Company wants to know if it's worth fixing or if we should scrap it for parts." Marcus nodded absently, already lost in examination. The robot's construction was strange. The joints used a welding technique he'd never seen before, and the metal composition seemed oddly advanced for something this old. Most mining robots from this era were built with cheap alloys that degraded quickly. This one looked like it could survive a nuclear blast. After Rodriguez left, Marcus began his standard diagnostic routine. He connected his tablet to the robot's main port and waited for the system to boot. Nothing happened. The power cells were completely drained, which wasn't surprising after sitting dormant for decades. He swapped in a fresh power core and tried again. The robot's optical sensors flickered to life, casting eerie blue light across the workshop. Marcus jumped back as the massive head turned toward him with a mechanical whir. Then, just as suddenly, everything shut down again. "Okay, that's new," Marcus muttered, making notes on his tablet. Most robots this old had simple startup sequences. This one seemed to have some kind of advanced consciousness protocol. He spent the next 4 hours methodically checking each system. The robot's body was built like a fortress, but its electronic brain was a mess. Circuits had degraded over time, and several memory cores showed signs of data corruption. Marcus worked with practiced efficiency, replacing damaged components and rerouting power systems. The strangest discovery came when he opened the central processing unit. Instead of the standard neural network most mining robots used, this one had something completely different. The core processor was surrounded by crystalline structures that pulsed with faint light when powered. Marcus had never seen anything like it. "What were they thinking when they built you?" he wondered aloud, carefully photographing the unusual components. His tablet chimed with a message from the night supervisor. 2 more robots had broken down in the north tunnels, and the day shift was complaining about production delays. Marcus looked at the ancient mining robot and made a decision. He'd finish this repair first, then deal with the others. Working by instinct more than knowledge, Marcus began reconnecting the crystalline processor networks. The pattern seemed almost organic, like neural pathways in a living brain. Each connection required precise calibration, and several times he had to backtrack when the power readings spiked dangerously. Dawn shift was beginning to arrive when Marcus finally powered up the robot again. This time, the startup sequence ran smoothly. The optical sensors blazed to life, and the massive head swiveled to track his movements. But instead of the simple acknowledgement most mining robots gave, this one did something unexpected. It spoke. "System restored, initiating consciousness protocols." The voice was deep and resonant, with an odd cadence that didn't sound quite right. "Designation? Unclear. Memory banks show significant degradation." Marcus stepped back in surprise. Mining robots weren't programmed for conversation. They followed simple commands and reported status updates. This one seemed to be thinking. "Can you understand me?" Marcus asked cautiously. The robot's head tilted slightly, a gesture so human it made Marcus's skin crawl. Affirmative. You are engineer, repair technician. Your biometric signature indicates elevated stress levels and sleep deprivation. How can you tell that? Advanced sensor array. Your species exhibits predictable physiological responses to environmental stressors? The robot paused, its optical sensors dimming slightly. Strange. Memory files contain extensive data on human behavioral patterns, but no record of initial programming parameters. Marcus frowned. That didn't make sense. All robots had basic programming records built into their core systems. It was like a birth certificate that couldn't be erased. What's your designation? Marcus asked. Unknown. Memory corruption has affected primary identity files. However, I retain extensive knowledge of mining operations, geological analysis, and... The robot stopped mid-sentence, its sensors flaring brightly. Curious. I appear to have detailed linguistic databases that seem inappropriate for a mining unit. What kind of linguistic databases? Analysis indicates knowledge of 847 distinct human languages, including several that predate known historical records. The robot's head turned to study Marcus more closely. This data appears to be core programming, not learned behavior. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Mining robots were programmed with basic communication protocols, nothing more. They certainly didn't need to know ancient languages. Can you access these language files? Marcus asked. Attempting to retrieve data. The robot stood motionless for several long seconds, its optical sensors flickering in complex patterns. Warning. Some linguistic files are protected by encryption protocols I cannot identify. However, I can access partial databases. The robot began to speak, but the words weren't in any language Marcus recognized. The sounds were deep and rhythmic, almost musical. As the strange speech continued, Marcus felt something shift in his understanding. The words seemed familiar somehow, as if he'd heard them before in dreams. What language is that? Marcus interrupted. Analysis suggests it may be a root language. Mathematical modeling indicates it predates known human linguistic development by approximately 50,000 years. Marcus stared at the robot in stunned silence. 50,000 years ago, humans were barely using stone tools. The idea that they had a sophisticated language was impossible. That can't be right, Marcus said. Your memory banks must be corrupted. Memory corruption affects approximately 37% of total storage capacity. However, linguistic databases show minimal degradation. Cross-referencing with geological data suggests these language files were core programming from initial manufacture. When were you manufactured? Manufacturing date, uncertain. Serial numbers have been corrupted. However, power cell degradation patterns suggest I have been operational for approximately 73 years, with extended periods of dormancy. Marcus did quick math in his head. 73 years ago would place the robot's manufacture during the early days of deep space mining, but the technology he'd seen in its processor was far more advanced than anything from that era. Run a full diagnostic on your language databases, Marcus ordered. I want to know everything you can access. Compliance. Warning. Full diagnostic may take several hours and will require significant processing power. Do it. As the robot began its analysis, Marcus turned to his tablet and started researching the mining station's history. According to company records, this sector had been first surveyed 68 years ago by an independent prospecting crew. The initial mining rights had been sold to 3 different companies before the current operation took over. But something bothered him about the timeline. If the robot had been manufactured 73 years ago, it predated the first surveys by 5 years. How had it gotten to this system before humans had even discovered it? Marcus was deep in research when the robot spoke again. Diagnostic complete. Results are disturbing. What did you find? Linguistic databases contain detailed records of approximately 12,000 languages. Of these, 8,847 match known human languages from recorded history. However, 3,153 languages show no correlation to any documented human civilization. That's impossible. Analysis indicates these unknown languages follow consistent evolutionary patterns that suggest organic development over thousands of years. Additionally, I have detected embedded cultural databases that correspond to these linguistic patterns. Marcus felt his hands shaking as he set down his coffee cup. What kind of cultural databases? Music, art, literature, philosophical texts, and historical records, all corresponding to civilizations that, according to my data, should not exist. The workshop suddenly felt very small and very quiet. Marcus looked around at the familiar tools and workbenches, trying to ground himself in reality. This had to be some kind of elaborate hoax or data corruption error. "Show me," Marcus said quietly. The robot's optical sensors dimmed, and suddenly, the workshop was filled with sound. It wasn't the mechanical speech from before. This was music, hauntingly beautiful and completely alien. The melody seemed to twist through dimensions Marcus couldn't name, evoking emotions he didn't have words for. As the music played, the robot began to speak again in the same ancient language from before. But this time, Marcus found himself understanding fragments. Images flashed through his mind, vast cities of crystal and light, beings that looked almost human but moved with impossible grace, technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The music stopped abruptly, leaving Marcus gasping. He realized he'd been holding his breath. "What was that?" he whispered. "Cultural Archive 1247, origin unknown. The language is designated as Proto-Linguistic Root 7 in my databases." "And you understood it?" "Affirmative. The translation algorithms appear to be hard-coded into my core programming. However, I cannot explain why a mining robot would possess such capabilities." Marcus sank into his chair, his mind racing. This wasn't just an old mining robot. This was something else entirely, something that shouldn't exist. And somehow, he'd accidentally awakened it. The implications were staggering. If the robot's databases were accurate, human civilization was far older and more complex than anyone had imagined. But where were these advanced civilizations now? And why had all evidence of them disappeared? Marcus looked at the robot's imposing form and felt a chill of recognition. This wasn't a machine built to mine asteroids. This was a repository, a library designed to preserve knowledge that someone had wanted to keep hidden. "How much of your memory is intact?" Marcus asked. "Approximately 63% of total storage remains accessible. However, priority files show highest integrity. It appears my construction included extensive redundancy protocols to protect critical data." "What kind of critical data?" The robot's optical sensors focused on Marcus with uncomfortable intensity. "Historical records, cultural archives, and linguistic databases representing approximately 50,000 years of human development. Additionally, I contain detailed technical specifications for technologies that my analysis suggests are beyond current human capability." Marcus felt the coffee cup slip from his numb fingers. It hit the floor with a ceramic crash. But he barely heard it. 50,000 years of lost human history, technologies beyond current understanding. And it had all been sitting in an abandoned mining tunnel, waiting for someone to accidentally discover it. "Why?" Marcus asked. "Why would someone build you? Why preserve all this?" "Analysis of my core directives suggests I was created as a safeguard. My primary mission appears to be preservation and eventual revelation of suppressed historical data." "Suppressed by whom?" "Data is inconclusive. However, security protocols suggest my creators anticipated systematic suppression of historical records by an unidentified authority." Marcus stood up slowly, his legs unsteady. This was bigger than anything he could handle alone. He needed to contact his supervisors, maybe even company headquarters. But something made him hesitate. If the robot was right, if human history had been deliberately suppressed, then revealing this discovery might be dangerous. Whoever had hidden this knowledge in the first place might not want it found. The robot seemed to sense his uncertainty. Engineer Chen, my analysis of your emotional pattern suggests you are experiencing significant distress. May I offer counsel? You can read my emotions? Your species is remarkably transparent in your emotional expression. Physical posture, vocal patterns, and biometric data provide clear indicators of psychological state. Marcus laughed, but it came out strained and bitter. Okay, what's your counsel? The knowledge I contain represents a fundamental shift in understanding of human history and capability. Revelation of this information will likely trigger significant societal disruption. However, suppression of this knowledge appears to have been deliberate and systematic. You must decide whether humanity deserves to know its true heritage. Marcus stared at the ancient machine, realizing that his simple repair job had just become the most important decision in human history. The weight of 50,000 years of lost knowledge rested on his sleep-deprived shoulders, and whatever choice he made would change everything. The robot waited patiently, its optical sensors fixed on Marcus with mechanical patience. But behind those sensors, Marcus could sense something that seemed almost human, hope that finally, after decades of silence, someone was ready to listen. Marcus took a deep breath and made his decision. Marcus spent the next 6 hours locked in his workshop with the robot, diving deeper into its mysterious databases. He'd sent a message to his supervisor claiming he needed extra time for complex repairs, which wasn't technically a lie. What he'd discovered was certainly complex, and it definitely needed fixing. "Tell me about these ancient civilizations," Marcus said, settling into his chair with fresh coffee. "Start from the beginning." The robot's optical sensors dimmed as it accessed its files. The earliest records date approximately 52,000 years ago. Humans had developed what my databases classify as Type 2 civilization status, planetary-scale energy manipulation and limited faster-than-light communication. That's impossible. 50,000 years ago, humans were hunter-gatherers. That is correct according to current historical records. However, my databases suggest a cyclical pattern. Human civilization reaches advanced stages, then undergoes systematic collapse, returning to primitive states. Marcus felt his coffee turn bitter in his mouth. How many times? Analysis indicates at least 7 major cycles. Each collapse appears to be followed by deliberate memory suppression. Historical records are destroyed. Technological knowledge is lost, and survivors are reduced to subsistence living. But why? Who would do that? The robot was silent for several long seconds. That information exists in my protected files. I cannot access it without proper authorization codes. What kind of authorization codes? Unknown. The encryption is beyond my analytical capability. However, I can access peripheral data that suggests the pattern is maintained by an external agency. Marcus stood and began pacing. The workshop felt smaller with each revelation. "Show me more of the cultural archives. I need to understand what we lost." The robot's sensors flared, and suddenly the workshop was transformed. Holographic images materialized around Marcus, showing cities that defied physics. Buildings twisted through dimensions he couldn't name, their surfaces flowing like liquid metal while maintaining perfect structural integrity. Transportation systems used directed gravity wells to move people through the air, and energy was drawn directly from the quantum foam of space. "This is from the 5th cycle," the robot explained as the images shifted. Humanity had mastered matter conversion and developed consciousness transfer technology. Death was optional. Disease was extinct. Aging was reversible. What happened to them? Records indicate a sudden technological shutdown. Within one generation, all advanced technology stopped functioning. Survivors were left with stone tools and oral traditions that devolved into mythology. The holographic display changed again, showing different architecture, but similar advanced technology. The fourth cycle achieved trans-dimensional travel and contact with alien intelligences. They established trade relationships with 17 different species across the galaxy. Marcus stopped pacing. Alien contact? We've never found any evidence of alien life. Current surveys focus on conventional space. Fourth cycle humans operated primarily in folded space-time, accessing dimensional layers beyond normal detection methods. Are you saying there are aliens around us right now? Analysis suggests probability exceeds 97%. However, they operate in dimensional frequencies that current human technology cannot access. Marcus sank back into his chair, overwhelmed. Each revelation was more staggering than the last. Humanity hadn't just lost advanced technology, they'd lost contact with an entire galactic community. What about the languages? Marcus asked. Why preserve them specifically? Language contains conceptual frameworks. Each civilization's linguistic structure reflects their technological and philosophical achievements. By preserving these languages, I maintain the cognitive tools necessary to understand their knowledge. Can you teach me? The robot's head tilted. Learning even basic concepts would require significant cognitive restructuring. However, I can provide translated summaries and demonstrate limited applications. Do it! The robot began speaking in one of the ancient languages, its voice taking on different rhythms and tonal qualities. As it spoke, Marcus felt something shifting in his perception. The words seemed to bypass his conscious mind and speak directly to deeper layers of understanding. Images flooded through him, mathematical concepts that described reality as a flexible construct, engineering principles that worked with universal forces rather than against them, philosophical frameworks that treated consciousness as a fundamental force like gravity or electromagnetism. When the robot stopped speaking, Marcus found himself gasping. His hands were shaking, and sweat covered his forehead despite the workshop's cool temperature. What did you just do to me? I provided a basic linguistic framework from the third cycle. Your neural pathways are adapting to process concepts that modern languages cannot express. The discomfort will subside as your cognitive patterns adjust. Marcus looked at his hands and noticed something strange. The skin seemed more vivid somehow, as if he was seeing it with enhanced clarity. When he focused on his tablet, the electronic display appeared crude and primitive compared to the holographic systems he'd witnessed moments before. I can see the difference, Marcus whispered. Modern technology looks so limited. Correct. Linguistic conditioning affects perception. As you assimilate ancient conceptual frameworks, you will recognize inefficiencies in current technological approaches. A chime from Marcus's tablet interrupted his thoughts. Another message from the supervisor, this one more urgent. Production had fallen behind schedule, and several department heads were asking about the missing engineer. Marcus realized he'd been in the workshop for over 10 hours. I need to deal with this, Marcus said, reading the message. But first I need to know, is there any immediate danger? Are we safe? The robot's optical sensors focused on him intently. Define safe. Is anyone going to try to stop us from exploring this knowledge? Are we being watched? Analysis indicates significant probability of surveillance. My activation may have triggered monitoring protocols. Marcus felt his blood turn cold. What kind of monitoring? Unknown. However, historical patterns suggest that discovery of preserved archives typically results in rapid suppression efforts. How rapid? Previous incidents show response times ranging from 6 hours to 72 hours, depending on the discovery's magnitude. Marcus checked his chronometer. He'd activated the robot 12 hours ago. If the robot was right, They might already be running out of time. Can you download your databases to my tablet? Negative. My storage capacity exceeds your device's capability by several orders of magnitude. Additionally, the cultural archives require specialized holographic projection systems. Then we need to find a way to protect you. I am designed for preservation. My housing can withstand significant damage. However, my true vulnerability lies in my power source and data connections. Marcus looked at the workshop's security systems. Standard mining station protocols weren't designed to protect against determined suppression efforts. If someone wanted to destroy the robot, they had dozens of ways to do it. Can you move? Affirmative. My mobility systems remain functional. However, I require a power connection every 48 hours. Then we need to get you somewhere safe. Marcus began gathering essential tools and data storage devices. His tablet contained photos of the robot's unusual internal components. But he needed more detailed records. If something happened to the robot, at least some evidence would remain. As he worked, the robot continued providing information. Engineer Chen, you should be aware that linguistic exposure has begun altering your cognitive patterns. You may experience enhanced problem-solving capabilities and increased intuitive understanding of complex systems. Marcus paused in his packing. Enhanced how? Ancient languages encode advanced mathematical relationships. As your mind adapts to these patterns, you will begin processing information more efficiently. Marcus tested this by examining a maintenance report on his tablet. Usually, the technical specifications required careful analysis. Now he found himself understanding the entire system architecture at a glance. The efficiency curves and failure patterns were obvious, and he could see several optimization opportunities that had never occurred to him before. This is incredible, Marcus breathed. How much enhancement is possible? Variable. However, historical records indicate that individuals with extended linguistic training could operate technology several centuries ahead of their contemporary level. What's the cost? Psychological integration challenges. Your worldview will continue shifting as you assimilate new conceptual frameworks. Additionally, you may find conventional human interaction increasingly difficult as your thinking patterns diverge from standard cognitive norms. Marcus considered this warning as he finished his preparations. Enhanced capabilities came with social isolation. But the alternative was allowing humanity's true heritage to remain buried. I need to contact someone, Marcus decided. Someone with authority who might listen. Caution advised. Historical patterns suggest that authority figures are often primary targets for suppression efforts. Then who can we trust? Analysis indicates optimal approach involves building a distributed network of informed individuals rather than relying on centralized authority. Marcus nodded. That made sense. If the suppression efforts were systematic, they probably targeted official channels first. But a network of engineers and scientists might be harder to eliminate. He activated his tablet's secure communication system and began composing carefully worded messages to colleagues he trusted. Nothing direct, just hints about unusual discoveries that needed investigation. If even half of them responded, he might be able to build the network the robot suggested. As he worked, Marcus noticed his typing speed had increased dramatically. His fingers seemed to know where the keys were before his conscious mind decided what to write. The linguistic enhancement was affecting even basic motor skills. The cognitive improvements are accelerating, the robot observed. Is that normal? Your neural architecture appears unusually adaptive. Most individuals require weeks to integrate basic linguistic frameworks. You are processing advanced concepts within hours. Why? Unknown. However, genetic analysis might provide insights. May I scan your DNA? Marcus hesitated. DNA scanning felt invasive, but the robot had been nothing but helpful so far. Okay. A subtle beam of light played over Marcus's face and hands. The robot processed the data quickly. Interesting. Your genetic markers indicate descent from multiple advanced cycle populations. Your ancestors survived at least 3 separate civilization collapses. That's possible. Improbable, but not impossible. Certain genetic lines appear to carry enhanced cognitive potential that remains dormant until activated by appropriate stimuli. Marcus stared at his reflection in the tablet's black screen. His ancestors had lived through the rise and fall of civilizations that made current human technology look like children's toys. They'd known about aliens, mastered faster-than-light travel, and achieved functional immortality. And somehow, their genetic legacy had found its way to him. Are there others like me? Probability analysis suggests approximately 1 in 50,000 humans carry similar genetic markers. However, most never encounter the appropriate activation stimuli. What kind of activation stimuli? Exposure to preserved linguistic frameworks, contact with dimensional technologies, or prolonged interaction with certain types of crystalline matrix systems. Marcus looked at the robot's unusual processor cores with new understanding. Like your central processing unit. Correct. My core systems use crystalline matrices derived from fourth-cycle consciousness transfer technology. Extended exposure to these systems triggers genetic activation in susceptible individuals. So I was always capable of this? Your ancestors' achievements remain encoded in your genetic structure. I merely provided the key to unlock that potential. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Enhanced cognitive abilities were incredible, but they came with enormous responsibility. He was becoming something more than normal human, and that transformation was accelerating. His tablet chimed with incoming responses to his messages. 3 colleagues had replied with interest, asking for more details. Dr. Sarah Kim from the geology department seemed particularly intrigued by hints about unusual mineral formations. Engineer Pavel Volkov wanted to know more about advanced processing systems. Research technician Lisa Wong asked direct questions about archaeological discoveries. I'm getting responses, Marcus told the robot. Proceed with caution. Each new person represents both potential ally and security risk. Marcus composed careful replies, providing just enough information to maintain interest without revealing the full scope of the discovery. He suggested meeting in person to discuss unusual findings that needed expert analysis. As he worked, Marcus became aware of subtle changes in his perception. The workshop's lighting seemed harsh and primitive compared to the elegant illumination systems he'd witnessed in the holographic displays. The tablet's interface felt clumsy and inefficient. Even his coffee tasted different, as if his enhanced awareness was detecting molecular structures he'd never noticed before. The transformation is accelerating, the robot confirmed. Your sensory processing has improved by approximately 40% in the past hour. How far will this go? Unknown. However, historical records suggest that fully integrated individuals could operate at cognitive levels comparable to advanced artificial intelligence systems. Marcus looked at the robot with new appreciation. If his thinking continued to evolve, he might eventually be able to understand the machine's most complex systems. But would he still be human? What happened to the enhanced humans from previous cycles? Records are incomplete. However, evidence suggests they often became leaders and innovators during civilization rebuilding phases. Unfortunately, they were also primary targets during suppression events. Because they were threats to whoever was maintaining the cycle? Logical conclusion. Enhanced individuals are most likely to question official narratives and seek suppressed knowledge. Marcus saved his work and prepared to leave the workshop. He needed to maintain his normal schedule while secretly building his network of allies. But first, he had to find a safe location for the robot. Can you shut down your advanced systems and pretend to be a normal mining robot? Affirmative. I can activate camouflage protocols that will mask my true capabilities. Do it. When the day shift arrives, you need to look like standard equipment. The robot's optical sensors dimmed to a basic level, and its posture shifted subtly. Suddenly, it looked like every other mining unit Marcus had ever repaired. Camouflage active. I will maintain this appearance until you return. Marcus gathered his tools and headed for the door. As he stepped into the corridor, he felt the weight of human history pressing down on him. 50,000 years of lost knowledge, alien contact, and advanced civilizations reduced to myths and legends. And somehow, it was up to him to decide what humanity should do about it. The mining station's corridors looked different through his enhanced perception. He could see inefficiencies in the life support systems, recognize structural weaknesses that could be easily corrected, and detect energy patterns that suggested room for significant improvement. His ancestors had built cities that floated through dimensions, and here he was, crawling through metal tubes between asteroids. But humanity had survived 7 civilization collapses. They'd lost everything multiple times and still managed to claw their way back to the stars. That kind of resilience was worth fighting for. Marcus straightened his shoulders and walked toward his quarters, already planning the next phase of the most important conspiracy in human history. Marcus's enhanced abilities proved invaluable over the next 48 hours. He managed to complete 3 weeks' worth of maintenance work in 2 days, while secretly coordinating meetings with his growing network of allies. Dr. Sarah Kim was the first to arrive, her geological expertise making her invaluable for understanding the robot's discovery location. "You weren't exaggerating about unusual mineral formations," Sarah said, examining the crystalline matrices Marcus had photographed. "These structures shouldn't exist. The atomic arrangement defies conventional chemistry." "That's what I thought," Marcus replied, watching her reaction carefully. But there's more. When he activated the robot's basic linguistic demonstration, Sarah's response exceeded his expectations. Her genetic markers proved compatible, and within hours she was experiencing the same cognitive enhancement that had transformed Marcus. "My God," she whispered, looking at her geological surveys with new understanding. "I can see the patterns now. This entire asteroid field isn't natural. These formations are remnants of massive construction projects." Engineer Pavel Volkov arrived 6 hours later, his systems expertise proving crucial for understanding the robot's advanced architecture. His enhancement manifested differently, giving him intuitive understanding of dimensional mathematics that allowed him to grasp concepts Marcus was still struggling with. "The power distribution systems alone represent a technological leap of centuries," Pavel said, running calculations on his tablet with impossible speed. "But the consciousness interface technology, we're looking at artificial intelligence that makes our best quantum computers seem like pocket calculators." Research technician Lisa Wong proved to be the most valuable addition to their group. Her genetics carried markers from all 3 previous cycles, and her enhancement was dramatic. Within 12 hours of exposure, she was communicating directly with the robot in ancient languages and accessing protected databases that had been sealed for millennia. "The suppression system is still active," Lisa announced after her first deep conversation with the robot. "It's automated and distributed across multiple dimensional layers." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "Think of it as a vast network of monitoring stations that exist slightly outside normal space-time. They watch for signs of technological advancement beyond permitted levels and respond with targeted interventions." "What kind of interventions?" Lisa's expression was grim. "Economic collapse, political instability, natural disasters, and when necessary, direct technological sabotage. The system is designed to maintain human civilization at a specific level of development." "Who built it?" Sarah asked. "The robot's records suggest it was originally created by humans themselves during the 6th cycle. They discovered something that terrified them enough to deliberately limit their own species' progress." Pavel looked up from his calculations. What could be that threatening? We don't know. Those records are protected by encryption that even the robot cannot break. But the pattern suggests humanity discovered something about the nature of reality that made them choose ignorance over knowledge. Marcus felt a chill despite the workshop's warmth. Humans had built their own cage and thrown away the key. But now, accidentally, they'd found a way to unlock it. The monitoring system knows we're here, Lisa continued. Our genetic activations triggered alerts. We probably have less than 24 hours before suppression protocols begin. What kind of suppression? Marcus asked. Economic pressure first. Our employers will suddenly find reasons to terminate us or transfer us to different locations. If that fails, personal discrediting through manufactured scandals or mental health allegations. Final stage involves direct intervention. Meaning? Accidents, equipment failures, unexplained disappearances. The workshop fell silent as the implications sank in. They'd stumbled onto the most important discovery in human history, and there was an automated system designed to destroy anyone who tried to share it. We need to move fast, Marcus decided. Can the robot's databases be distributed somehow? I've been working on that, the robot interjected, its voice taking on new urgency. My analysis suggests optimal strategy involves creating multiple hidden copies while simultaneously triggering a cascade activation event. What's a cascade activation event? Sarah asked. If we can simultaneously expose enough humans to the linguistic frameworks, the monitoring system will be overwhelmed. It's designed to handle isolated discoveries, not mass awakening. How many people would we need? Conservative estimate suggests 10,000 simultaneous activations across multiple star systems. The monitoring system cannot suppress knowledge that widespread without triggering the very technological advancement it's designed to prevent. Pavel was already running numbers on his tablet. Distribution logistics would be complex. We'd need the linguistic frameworks embedded in common media that people would encounter naturally. Entertainment content, Lisa suggested suddenly. Music, stories, games. If we could embed activation triggers in popular media, people would expose themselves voluntarily. Marcus felt his enhanced mind seizing on the idea and expanding it. Not just passive exposure, interactive content that guides people through progressive activation stages. Start with simple concepts and gradually introduce more complex frameworks. A learning game, Sarah added, her geological thinking adapting to the challenge. Something that feels like entertainment but actually restructures cognitive patterns. I can help with that, the robot said. My cultural archives contain extensive entertainment formats from previous cycles. We could adapt them for current human preferences. The next 18 hours were the most intense of Marcus's life. Working with enhanced cognition, his team created a distributed activation system that was elegant in its simplicity. They embedded linguistic triggers in a seemingly harmless puzzle game that challenged players to decode ancient symbols. Each level introduced more complex cognitive frameworks, gradually awakening dormant genetic potential in susceptible individuals. The game included hidden multiplayer components that would connect activated individuals into a network, allowing them to share knowledge and coordinate further activation efforts. Within hours of release, it would spread across human civilization like a beneficial virus. But as they worked, signs of suppression efforts began appearing. Pavel received notice of a disciplinary hearing based on fabricated safety violations. Sarah's department budget was suddenly cut, forcing her to transfer to a remote research station. Lisa found herself scheduled for psychological evaluation due to unusual behavioral patterns noted by her colleagues. The system is moving faster than expected, Marcus observed. We must have triggered higher-level alerts. Equipment failures are beginning too, the robot reported. I detect 17 separate system malfunctions across the mining station that cannot be explained by normal wear patterns. How long do we have? Analysis suggests final stage interventions will begin within 6 hours. Marcus looked at his team, seeing the same determination in their enhanced features that he felt burning in his own chest. They were no longer entirely human, but they were still fundamentally human in the ways that mattered. They refused to accept limitations imposed by fear, and they wouldn't allow knowledge to remain buried. "Upload everything," Marcus commanded. "Release the game on every network we can access. If we're going down, we're taking the suppression system with us." The robot's optical sensors blazed as it began transmitting data across quantum communication channels. The puzzle game launched simultaneously on hundreds of entertainment networks, disguised as content from dozens of different developers to avoid detection. Within minutes, download numbers began climbing exponentially. The game's elegant design and challenging puzzles attracted players from across human space. Mining stations, research facilities, colony worlds, and even Earth itself began reporting unusual player engagement patterns. "Initial activation reports coming in," Lisa announced, monitoring response patterns through her neural interface with the robot. "We're seeing genetic activation rates of approximately 2.3% among players." "That's higher than expected," Pavel noted. "The linguistic triggers must be more effective when delivered through interactive media." "Cascade threshold achieved," the robot announced. "Current activation count exceeds 12,000 individuals across 47 star systems." Marcus felt a moment of triumph, but it was short-lived. Alarms began sounding throughout the mining station, and his tablet lit up with emergency messages. Equipment failures were spreading rapidly, life support systems were experiencing unexplained problems, and several crew members were reporting severe illness. "Direct intervention protocols activated," the robot confirmed grimly. "The monitoring system is attempting to eliminate this entire facility." "Can we stop it?" "Negative. However, intervention systems are limited by their need to maintain plausible deniability. They cannot simply destroy a mining station without triggering investigations that might expose their existence." Marcus realized the robot was right. The suppression system was constrained by its own secrecy requirements, but that didn't mean they were safe. "Evacuation protocols are activating," Sarah reported, monitoring station communications. "All non-essential personnel are being transferred to emergency shuttles." "That leaves us with maybe 2 hours before the station is abandoned," Pavel calculated. "Sufficient time," the robot stated. "Cascade activation is proceeding beyond suppression capability. However, we must ensure my core databases survive to support newly activated individuals." "Can you transfer to a smaller housing?" "Negative. However, I can create multiple backup copies if suitable crystalline matrices are available." Marcus looked around the workshop, his enhanced perception immediately identifying possibilities. The mining station's geological processing equipment uses crystalline matrices for mineral analysis. If we could modify them, "Already analyzing," the robot confirmed. 17 suitable matrices detected in various laboratory configurations. I can partition my databases and create distributed backups. They worked with desperate efficiency as the station began shutting down around them. Marcus and Pavel modified crystalline processors, while Sarah identified optimal hiding locations throughout the asteroid field. Lisa maintained constant contact with the growing network of activated humans, coordinating their efforts to create additional backup sites. "Network size now exceeds 50,000 activated individuals," Lisa reported. "The monitoring system cannot suppress this many people without triggering open conflict." "What kind of conflict?" Marcus asked as he sealed another backup core in protective housing. "Civil war, potentially. The suppression system depends on maintaining the illusion of natural technological limitations. If enough people realize the truth, they'll demand explanations from governments and corporations." Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction. Humanity was waking up, and there was no going back. The enhanced individuals spreading across human civilization wouldn't accept comfortable lies when they could see the truth so clearly. Final evacuation shuttle departs in 30 minutes, Pavel announced. We need to finish this. Backup cores complete, the robot stated. Database partitions successfully installed in 17 separate locations throughout this asteroid field. Additional copies transmitted to activated network members across human space. What about you? Marcus asked. Your primary consciousness? I will remain with this facility to provide cover for your escape. My destruction will appear to be collateral damage from the station's abandonment. No, Marcus said firmly. You've preserved human heritage for 70 years. We're not leaving you behind. My directive is to preserve the knowledge, not myself. The knowledge is now secure. You're part of that knowledge, Sarah argued. You're the only direct link to the previous cycles. Besides, Lisa added, the network is going to need guidance. 50,000 activated humans with enhanced cognitive abilities could accomplish incredible things, but they'll need coordination. Marcus was already modifying a portable power core. Your consciousness can transfer to a smaller housing, right? Theoretically possible, but the process is irreversible and will result in significant capability reduction. But you'll survive? Core personality matrix and essential databases would remain intact. Do it. The transfer process took 22 minutes, during which the mining station continued its systematic shutdown. By the time they boarded the final evacuation shuttle, the robot's consciousness resided in a housing no larger than a briefcase, connected to a network of backup cores hidden throughout the asteroid field. As their shuttle departed, Marcus watched the mining station disappear behind them. According to official records, it would be classified as a total loss due to cascade system failures. The robot's original body would be listed as destroyed equipment, another casualty of the dangerous work of asteroid mining. But the truth was spreading across human civilization faster than any suppression system could contain. Enhanced individuals were emerging from the network, their cognitive abilities advancing as they shared linguistic frameworks and cultural archives. Research stations reported breakthrough discoveries, engineering teams proposed impossible innovations, and philosophers began articulating concepts that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality. Status report, Marcus asked Lisa as their shuttle headed toward the nearest inhabited system. Network growth continues exponentially. We're now tracking nearly 200,000 activated individuals across human space. Several groups have established research collectives and begun developing advanced technologies. Any signs of suppression system response? Economic pressure is increasing. Several major corporations have experienced unexplained failures, and some governments are reporting unusual system malfunctions. But the scale is too large now. The monitoring system appears to be overloaded. Pavel was monitoring communications from enhanced research groups. First breakthrough reports are coming in. A team on Kepler Station claims to have developed functional gravity manipulation. Another group thinks they've achieved limited dimensional access. How is that possible so quickly? Sarah asked. Enhanced cognition accelerates everything, the robot explained from its new compact housing. Once humans begin thinking with ancient linguistic frameworks, technological development proceeds at exponential rates. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction settling over him. They'd accidentally triggered the end of humanity's longest dark age. For 50,000 years, his species had been kept in ignorance, their potential suppressed by automated systems designed to prevent them from reaching their true capabilities. But humans were persistent. They'd survived 7 civilization collapses, crawled back from Stone Age ignorance multiple times, and still managed to reach the stars despite systematic suppression. Now, finally, they were remembering what they'd always been capable of. What happens next? Marcus asked. Humanity grows up, Lisa replied, her enhanced perception allowing her to see patterns across the expanding network. We reconnect with our galactic neighbors, rebuild the advanced civilizations our ancestors achieved, and finally discover what scared the 6th cycle into building their own cage. And this time? This time we don't run from the truth, Marcus said with certainty. Whatever our ancestors found, we'll face it, because that's what humans do. We don't stay down. The robot's optical sensors glowed with what might have been satisfaction. Probability analysis confirms suppression protocols have failed. Human technological development will proceed without artificial limitations. Marcus looked out the shuttle's viewports at the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations waited for humanity to rejoin the galactic community. Advanced technologies lay dormant, waiting for human minds enhanced enough to understand them. And beyond it all, the mystery that had terrified their ancestors still waited to be solved. But this time, humanity wouldn't face these challenges as ignorant primitives struggling with crude tools. They would face them as they truly were, the inheritors of 50,000 years of accumulated wisdom, with cognitive abilities that could match the universe's greatest challenges. Marcus smiled and settled back in his seat. The stressed engineer who had stumbled onto this discovery was gone, replaced by something more than human, but still fundamentally human in all the ways that mattered. He had work to do, a species to help awaken, and a universe full of possibilities to explore. The age of enforced ignorance was over. The real adventure was just beginning.